run them countries. And you know the only thing about that is in America they don't want to send no aids to no black countries. So if we can take over this country, Hebrew, we can help these other countries with Hebrews in it, and maybe we could just go on and populate the world the way the Most High wanted us to, and run the world. See, we got to have a strategy in hand, because if we just sit down here every day waiting on the Most High to come down from the sky and save us, then we looking at the wrong thing. We missing the whole big picture. The whole big picture is we are in a country that our ancestors built from the ground that belongs to us. We are in a country that we own, that we should own. And half of us is Native Americans, what they would call Native Americans, not those Mongolians that they show you them look white. They Mongolians, and that's what they are. But I'm talking about the real American Indians, or you Hebrews. You are the real American Indians, the people out there whose families could tell you that we was Indians. We come from India. Hey, it's real. Because we know that them Mongolians was not here then. So the native peoples of this land was black folks. So let's take this mess seriously. Let's get up and get out there and do something so we can possess this country and move them right-wing peoples out the way. Hebrews, check this out.
Please welcome Stacey Abrams. Welcome to the show.
I did not sit down properly. There we go.
Welcome to the show. Your story is one that has been both inspirational and meteoric. It feels like, and yet on the ground you have been doing so much work. Before we get into the story of how you've been getting people voting and how you are conducting a race that many people do not believe you can win, I wanted to ask you about one thing I've noticed about you in the news, and that is, we joke about it on the show, but people often refer to you as the first black female governor. That's the one thing they say. They go, she could be the first black female governor. And then they go, and her opponent, and then they'll mention all the things that he's running on. His platform is this, but she could be black and a governor. Do you feel like sometimes people only focus on the fact that you would be making history and not on the fact that you would be actually doing the job?
I think sometimes there is a Crayola version of policy making that happens, where they do focus on color.
Right.
My mission is to talk about issues, to talk about education, and to talk about why it's so critical that we create jobs for everyone that pay a good wage, to talk about expanding access to Medicaid so poor people don't get sick in Georgia,
right,
and that we have hospitals that can take care of people when they get sick. But it's hard to get them to focus on that because I think they're so surprised, some, by how far I've been able to come, despite what they consider both a disqualifier and a really interesting fact that fits really nicely on a crayon.
Right, and it's interesting that you wrote about that in the book as well. You speak about the difficulties of being a person of color who is trying to run in a race where people make that seem like it's some sort of hindrance. You know, people will ask you, they'll say, well, how do you plan to get out the white vote? And how do you plan to get out the white votes?
I'll take it.
No, it's funny because they don't, like you say in the book, they don't ask it the other way. So, like,
yeah.
What do you stick to when people ask you that type of question?
I talk to everyone about what matters. What I tell folks is I sound the same in North Georgia, which is predominantly white, in Midtown Atlanta, in downtown Atlanta, and in Savannah. I sound the exact same. I never change who I am or what I talk about, because I think that fundamentally it doesn't really matter what race you are. You want a good governor who can lead.
Right.
And I think that
You have been personally attacked by the President of the United States.
Yes, I have.
Which I feel like you would wear with a badge of honor. Trump called you the open border crime-loving opponent that the Democrats have given.
Yes.
She's weak on vets, the military, and the Second Amendment.
I'm a terrible person by his estimation. Let me correct this. I believe in strong bipartisan federal immigration. I do not love crime. In fact, I hate crime. I am the only candidate in this race who's actually passed legislation to protect our vets and our military, and I know how to shoot a gun. I know how to shoot a gun. I know you don't point it at other people. I know how to use it effectively, and I know that gun safety means that some people shouldn't get to have guns because they hurt you.
Right. When the president and your opponents talk about crime loving, they're really referring to your prison policies and the ideas that you wish to put forth about prison reform. Why are those issues that you are so focused on?
I've talked very openly about the fact that I have a family member who has dealt with prison. He's an incredible man who deserves every opportunity to be active and engaged in society. And when we as a community decide that you should be held accountable for your crimes, we also have to decide that you can come back and be a part of our community when you get out.
Right.
I've spent the last 7 years working very closely with the governor of Georgia to push criminal justice reform laws, not only transition for prisoners, but making sure we don't charge someone who's 17 as though they're 18, making sure that we decriminalize being poor. You shouldn't go to jail because you're poor, and you shouldn't stay in jail because you can't afford justice. That doesn't make sense.
The conversations that people have in and around some of your ideas is they say, oh, I mean, we understand why you would say this about, criminal justice reform and why you have these views on tax. One of the ideas I heard about you that was really interesting was someone asked, they said, Stacey Abrams, how can she be governor when she herself is in debt? And what was interesting is you were the person who came out and told people when you were running that you are in debt. You told people that you have student loans. This is something most candidates would hide. So if somebody wants to vote for you and you are in debt, how do you expect them to work through those two seemingly conflicting ideas?
So I actually dedicate a whole chapter in my book to money, because one thing that you learn when you are in the minority is that money plays as huge a part in your success as your intellect, as your capacity. It is an anchor that can drag you down. And I want people to understand that you want leaders who actually remember what it was like to have to make decisions, to struggle with money, to struggle with the real choices we make every day. I have student loan debt because I went to really good schools that cost a lot of money. I have tax, I reported my income I reported my income to the IRS. They never failed to know how much I owed them. I just told them I'll get to you.
Right.
I'm going to pay, because I have parents who had medical needs. I have a niece that my parents are raising. I am responsible primarily for not just my household, but another one. And I want a leader who knows how to make decisions when things are tough, not just someone who can make easy choices because they've never had to face challenge.
Right.
I think it makes me a better candidate.
When you look at the issues that are driving you in this race, one of the big things people are concerned about are the raw numbers. People are saying in order for you to win, you would have to turn out the black vote like it has never turned out before. And in many ways, that's the reason you're sitting here today. That's the reason people are taking notice, is because you have motivated black people to register to vote like never before. I mean, I believe you were part of a campaign where at one point, 800,000 black people had not registered to vote. And I think that number has now diminished to 350,000, which is an insane jump. So there are two things that I would like to understand. One, why do you find in your personal experience so many black people don't register to vote? And two, why do you think it's so important to get these people into it? It seems like an obvious answer, but why are you mobilizing these people in that way, and how are you doing it?
So when I founded the New Georgia Project in 2014 or 2013, there were 800,000 unregistered people of color, the majority of whom, 600,000 of whom were African American. But you also had a large population of Latinos and a smaller population of Asian Americans who weren't registered. The problem with that is we are making choices and decisions about everyone's lives. And if you're not part of the decision making, I promise you, you're still going to be affected. The really crass way I've heard it put is, look, if you're either at the table or you were on the menu. And these were hundreds of thousands of people, basically the state of South Dakota, who were not engaged in deciding leadership. They were watching their hospitals get shut down. They're watching their children go to prison, and they had no say. I grew up in a family that has always been a part of the civil rights movement. My parents helped register folks before it was legal. and they raised us to revere the right to vote.
Right. I'm
going to win this election because I revere the right to vote, and I'm going to talk to every single Georgian because I know they're voting. And for me, the real important piece of this, and I think why people get confused, I want every vote, but I'm going to center the votes of those who are the least likely to be asked to vote, and that tends to be people of color, predominantly African Americans. We live in a nation that has spent centuries denying the right to vote, and spent decades creating barriers to that right to vote. And I have an opponent who is a remarkable architect of voter suppression. My mission is to tell folks, he doesn't matter, you do. Your right to vote is yours, and I'm going to give you a reason to use it, because when you elect me as the next governor, your life will get better because we're going to work on it together.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Really wonderful having you. Minority Leader is available now. Stacey Abrams, everybody.